Proverbs chapter 3, beginning from verses 1 to 12. Hear the word of the Lord. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life, in peace they will add to you. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, or be weary of his reproof. For the Lord reproves him whom he loves, as a father the son in whom he delights. May the Lord add his blessings to the reading of his holy word. One day in the spring of my freshman year at college, hoping to be a college athlete, I was running with the track team, about a 5-mile run, and barely able to keep up when Ronnie slowed from his position near the front of the pack to fall back and run with me, straggling behind. Ronnie was faster than me. He was in the Army, having just recently finished boot camp, and so he proceeded to yell at me like a drill instructor, would to a trainee. I've never seen that in person, but I've, like in the movies, come on, you so-and-so. No profanity. He was a Christian man, but the intent was there. Pick it up. You call that running? My grandmother can run faster than that. Let's get going. Kind of like that. On and on and on. He did that for some time, egging me on to run faster. I remember thinking my legs were turning to rubber. I was exhausted. I was in pain. I wanted to quit, but Ronnie was taunting me to keep up and go faster. And I kept up. I kept at it through that track season and through the next summer. And when it came time for the beginning of the cross-country season in the fall of my sophomore year, I had the goal for my first race at the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee, of beating Ronnie. I was going to beat Ronnie. That was my goal. And I did. I beat him, of course, because I had listened to him months earlier. I hadn't ignored him. I hadn't thought, well, I don't need his spurring. I don't like the way he's talking to me. I'm going to stop. I'm going to show him just by walking from now on. I hadn't got angry at him and quit because I didn't like to be talked to like that. I knew that even though he was playing the drill instructor and shouting at me, that he was doing it for me. He supplied the disciplines so I could beat him in that first race. Later, he would pass me again later that season. Do you need discipline? Immediately, somebody protests that all this stuff about discipline talk, that's legalistic. That's like Old Testament stuff. That's dreary duty. That's not for us. Now, in the gospel, all we need is inspiration, motivation, acceptance, right? We're just accepted and then we'll do better. Someone said, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. Let's see someone try that. Just long for the endless immensity of the sea and just hope a ship comes out of that. Anyway, someone scoffed at the idea of churches like ours, like the Puritans used to, having covenants. Why have a covenant? Have a vision statement. Isn't that much better? The wise way, we're told today, to get people to do what they're supposed to do is to inspire them, to cast a vision. Some pastors these days even have as their job description, vision caster. That sounds great, doesn't it? I'm a vision caster. So that once people are motivated, so the theory goes, they will then do what mere calls to discipline, to commitment, would never do. Kind of just spontaneously arising out of their inspiration. They'll just do what they're supposed to do, even without discipline, apparently. So then, do you really need discipline? Well, again, like last week, we're doing something unusual for us rather than the normal expository message in which we take one passage, like here we would the first 12 verses of chapter 3, rather than taking just that passage and making the main point of the passage the main point of the message. We're looking at one of the main subjects of the book of Proverbs, and that is one of them. There's several of them, but one of them is discipline. The passage we read from Proverbs 3, while it touches on this topic, it won't confine us this time. We're looking now at what Proverbs says about discipline, and we can look at that in three parts. First, the reward of discipline, then the realms of discipline, and finally, the relationships of discipline. First, the reward of discipline. And we see that in this passage we read from Proverbs chapter 3, and particularly in the first two verses. The sage there tells us that if we don't forget his teaching, that if we keep his commandments, that's by actually doing the things he tells us to do, then you will generally get two things in verse 2. A longer life and peace. In other words, a harmonious, tranquil, and longer, generally, life. You'll have more time to live because you were a disciplined person. You restrain yourself sexually, so you avoided the bad consequences that come with being immoral. You restrain your anger, so you didn't get into fights or break relationships or get sued for defamation because you said something slanderous about somebody. You restrain your spending, so you saved for what you needed, and therefore you didn't go into debt. So you had more money at the end of life. You restrained your appetites, so you didn't suffer from type 2 diabetes or get clogged arteries because you ate too much, or sclerosis of the liver because you drank too much. You were careful with your words, and so got along better with people. You restrained your fears, so you didn't panic. You didn't live in dread all the time. You generally enjoyed the rewards of a disciplined life. Now, the word discipline to us often sounds stark, sounds heavy, sounds burdensome. No fun, right? Discipline doesn't inspire this idea of this is going to be fun. But discipline brings great rewards. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 23 says, the reproofs of the discipline are the way of life. The reproofs, that is the correction of discipline. Discipline corrects you, and it shows you the way of life, the how to live. You want life? Then get discipline. And the flip side is true too. If discipline brings a great reward, lack of discipline brings a great penalty. And Proverbs chapter 5, verse 23 says, the wicked die because of their lack of discipline. And in the New Testament, this great truth that long life comes through discipline, actually raised to a higher level. In the gospel, we see that the Holy Spirit comes to us first, Jesus said in John chapter 16, verse 8, to convict, that is to discipline, to reprove, convict concerning sin and righteousness and judgment. He reproves us. He corrects us. He tells us that we are sinners, that we've offended a perfectly holy God. We're not right with him, and we need to be clothed with the righteousness of Christ. Like we sung, we need to be washed with his blood. There is judgment. There is a price to be paid for our sins. Salvation begins by us being disciplined. That's why we're told in chapter 3 to not despise it. Don't be weary of it. Accept it, because life will come through it. It comes with a great reward, life. Discipline has a great reward, and it has many realms. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls, in chapter 29, verse 15. Now, in those days, walls were the main defense from outside invaders. A city without walls could be easily overcome by any marauding army. It had no ability to defend itself. So too, someone who is out of control of himself, has no discipline, is someone who can be easily overcome by any enemy. The world, the flesh, or the devil. There are at least 8 different realms of our lives discipline is supposed to rule over. 8 realms of discipline. First, sex. This is such an important one in Proverbs that there's 2.5 chapters focused on it. Chapter 5, second half of chapter 6, and all of chapter 7. And all of that is to tell us to be disciplined with our sexuality. That is to be kept strictly within marriage. It portrays the draw of sex that traps the undisciplined. In chapter 5, verse 3, the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. She is so seductive. In chapter 7, an easy woman is out on the town. She's looking for some fool to catch. She's got lots of meat at home, lots to eat. lots to indulge in. So come to my place, she says, for the party. We got lots to eat. You should see how it's done up. It looks great. Come see. And in chapter 7, verse 18, she says, come, let us take our fill of love till morning. Let us delight ourselves with love. And then in verse 21, with much seductive speech, she persuades him. With her smooth talk, she compels him. That's the lure. What's the result? Her house is the way to Sheol, to the grave. She looks like she's taking you to pleasure. She's taking you to your death, going down to the chambers of death. And even before you reach death, in chapter 5, verse 11 and 12, they tell us at the end of your life, before you're even dead, you groan when your flesh and your body are consumed, and you say, how I hated discipline. There is much immediate pleasure promised. And if you're not disciplined, you'll fall for the bait, into the trap, only to find out later, as you're groaning, you're dreading what you've done, maybe lonely, having lived for immediate pleasures, that now you have no life to enjoy. Sex is a realm that discipline must rule over. The instruction is really simple to understand. Sex within marriage only. It's not that sex is bad. It certainly is not. Chapter 5 tells married people to enjoy and be satisfied with our sex lives in marriage. Chapter 5, verse 18 says, rejoice in the wife, we could add husband, I guess, of your youth. In other words, be satisfied and satisfying to the one you married when you were young. Right? Don't go, you get middle-aged, whatever middle-age crisis they call it, don't go looking for another one. Stimulate yourself. Don't go looking for a newer model, like cars you trade in occasionally. Now, don't encourage through pornography or online relationships fantasies about other hypothetical fantasy partners that leave you dissatisfied with your marriage partner. If you're not married, then you don't need to be teased with sexuality and sensuality that draws you closer and closer to temptations to do things discipline would keep you from doing. Discipline waits. Sex has the power to drag us down into hell if we are not disciplined. Are you in control of your sexuality? Second is our temper. Anger, like sexual desire, is not always bad. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 says, be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun go down in your anger. It's not being angry that is bad, but being out of control of your anger. Discipline gives us the power to control it. That's what one reason it's called temper. Like tempered steel has more strength. Is your temper strong? Whether we choose not to express our anger at all, we just say, I'm not going to respond. Or to express it, maybe you can express it gently. That takes a great deal of self-control to be angry and be able to express it with gentleness. Or like Jesus driving out the money changers from the temple, we express it vigorously. That also takes self-control to not allow it to take you over if you're expressing it vigorously. And that's very rare. I mean, Jesus didn't do that commonly either. The question, no matter which way we choose, the question is whether we are in control of our anger. Like steel, it has to be tempered to be strong. Does our temper have enough strength so we can control our anger, even when it's hot? Well, Proverbs has a lot to say about controlling anger. The vexation, or we might say irritation, the irritation of a fool is known as what? He gets irritated, you know it right away, because he expresses it. But the prudent ignores an insult in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 16. Proverbs chapter 19, verse 11 says something similar. Good sense, that's wisdom, makes one slow to anger. And it's his glory to overlook an offense. The person who has no self-control can't help but to immediately show that he's mad, that he's been offended, that he feels insulted. He has to let it out. But the prudent can be insulted and wait. Think carefully whether or not to respond. And if so, how? Proverbs chapter 14, verse 17 says, a man of quick temper acts foolishly. When your anger is out of control, the only thing that you can see at that moment is whatever it is you are angry about. You don't see what may be the repercussions of the angry words you're about to blurt out. You don't see that at all. You're so angry, you just got to say that. And it may be entirely true, but you're not seeing what's going to do. That's why you should discipline yourself that when you are angry, be extra careful with what you say. Bite your tongue. Sometimes walk away. Sometimes don't make that phone call. Like I did once, made a big mistake, made a phone call when I was angry and I blurted out things. Don't do that. You write out an email, don't send it right away. Sit on it a while. Go back and edit, tone it down. Certainly don't make any big decisions. Be in control. The one who can control his temper shows that he or she has great strengths. Whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit. In other words, he's in control of his anger and the rest of his passions. That he's better than he who takes a city. In chapter 16, verse 32. That is, if you're able to control your temper, then you have the discipline of a hero. Are you in control of your temper? How about your need for pleasure? Just the things you crave. It can be legitimate pleasure, but do you feel like you got to indulge in it? You're longing for luxuries, the urge to buy that thing, whatever it is, the newest gadget, tablets, bigger and bigger HD TVs, UHD TVs, whatever they're going to come out with next. Whatevers, the nicest car, to be pampered at some spa, the most expensive restaurant, the most luxurious vacation, whatever satisfies your taste buds. Whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich. In Proverbs chapter 21, verse 17. Now, wine in their day was the main beverage other than water or milk. Basically, that's, as far as I can tell, that was their three choices. Wine, water, or milk. And wine was the luxurious one. It was the what would you call it? The treat. It was also much costlier than water or milk. If you loved it, and you just had to have it all the time, every meal. If you didn't get drunk off of it, you just had it regularly, all the time. Instead of settling for water or milk. Well, you become poor. You're squandering your money on buying wine all the time. Oil was for refreshing yourself, for looking good and that soothing sensation. You can splurge on that for special occasions, sure. But if you have to have it all the time, just frequently, that shows a lack of self-control. Discipline is the ability to say no to your short-term desires in order to get your long-term goals. And our long-term goal should be to honor the Lord with our whole lives, including with our money, with our wealth. And that's in chapter 3, verse 9. And we do that, we honor the Lord with our wealth by being content with what we have. Like we sang, that's why we sang that song, "You Are Enough." All of you is more than enough. We be content with what we need, saying no to the luxuries we might want. Are you in control of your longing for luxuries, for treats? What about your appetites for food and drink? Can you control that? Can you have something good, that you love, but in moderation? The passage we read, chapter 3, verse 10, if we honor the Lord with our wealth, then he rewards us with our vats bursting with wine, it says. We have more than enough of this luxurious beverage that we know what to do with. Your vats are bursting with it. You got a lot of wine on your hands. Wine is a sign of blessing. It means he has blessed us because we honored him with our wealth. But can you have some wine without being overcome by it? Can you control yourself to have a cup, and now you're no longer thirsty, you've had your treat, and you can stop. Even if it tastes so good, you so want another one. If so, if you can say no, you can do that. You have self-discipline, and so you're wise. If not, Proverbs chapter 20, verse 1 is for you. Wine is a mocker, strong drink a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise. Whoever does not have the self-control is led astray by wine, led astray from wisdom. By wine or by beer or by other liquors, some kind of alcohol, and so is soon having more than he should, then lubricated. Now he's saying things he shouldn't. He's a mocker. He starts mocking things. Next, he's uninhibited, so he's fighting, otherwise foolish. being easily seduced, that kind of thing. Driving and getting in crashes because he's DUI. The principle is not never to drink any alcohol, but to have self-control. Now, in their day, wine was the main thing that people could show their lack of self-control with. Today, it could be many things, I think. It could be ice cream, Coca-Cola, too many trips to the buffet, whatever it is that controls you. I heard a grossly overweight woman bitterly complain when she was corrected for drinking too much Coke that, "I don't drink." Well, she thought because she didn't get drunk on alcohol that she was cleared from the charge of gluttony, debauchery. But the point isn't what you eat or drink, but whether you are in control of it. Are you in control of your eating and drinking? How about your talking? That too could be something that is out of control. Talking too much is a form of self-indulgence. I once worked at this job, one-day job, and you had to be with these same people for 40 hours straight. And there were these two, excuse me if I'm sexist, but I am, two ladies who talked continually. I got to a point where I was just amazed that they could continue to do that. I would have run out of things to say. But they just, except for the time where they slept, 40 hours straight talking. I just find that amazing. That's the way some people are. They feel like they just have to talk. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 19 says, "When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent." It used to be said, it just occurred to me, I know a lot of men, by the way, who talk too much. So Mary's laughing. Yeah, there are a lot of those. It's not just a female thing. Anyway, it used to be said, "Still waters run deep." And people respected that. People respected the strong, silent type. Saw a silent person, mostly quiet. He's a strong, silent. That's good. That was their way of saying this is probably a wise man because he's silent. Maybe he opens his mouth and then you realize he's not so wise after all. But generally they say he's keeping control of it. He doesn't have to talk all the time. That's a virtue. That's a strength. And when you do speak, though, are you in control of what you say so that your words don't hurt feelings or damage relationships unnecessarily? There is one whose rash words are like sword thrust, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. In Proverbs chapter 12, verse 18. Do your words show that you are in control of them? What about your ego? Are you disciplined enough to not believe that little voice in your head that tells you only what you want to hear? That you're the greatest. That you are the smartest. You know better than everyone else. That you are, fill in the blank, whatever it is you want to be. You are that. Don't listen to anyone tell you different. Do you have enough self-control to turn down the volume of your pride and to listen to the truth? It's better to be of a lowly spirit with the poor than to divide the spoil with the proud. In Proverbs chapter 16, verse 19. Can you humble yourself to be with people that your pride says you are better than? You think, I have a college degree. Why should I be hanging out with these people that didn't graduate from high school? Can you do what the Apostle Paul says in Romans chapter 12, verse 3? Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought, but humbly take the role in which you can best serve the body. What that requires is the self-discipline to say no to that monster that we all have in us that demands that I be exalted. Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked are sin. Chapter 21, verse 4. Notice that verse, interesting verse. That for the wicked, their haughtiness, their pride, is what they see the world through. Haughty eyes. They're seeing through those haughty eyes out to the world. It's like the sunglasses people wear. It tints everything they see. For them, their pride, their ego distorts the world the way they see it. Their determination not to be offended or to be denied. Pride, it also says, is their lamp. It's their source of light. So everything they see it in the light of their pride, their self-centeredness. The wicked are controlled by their pride. Can you control it instead? Next, you have the discipline of keeping your commitments. In Proverbs chapter 3, verse 3, which we read, we are to not let, that is, do not allow steadfast love and faithfulness to forsake you. In other words, don't let them get away. Now, steadfast love in Hebrew, the Hebrew word chesed, one of my favorite words, is covenant loyalty. It's being committed to others, first to God, and then to those to whom you have made commitments. It's combined often in Scripture, as here, with the word faithfulness. And that's to emphasize, it's already very much about loyalty already, connected with faithfulness, emphasizes the unshakableness of it. Being a person of integrity who keeps his or her promises. Proverbs tells us to never let these characteristics go. Don't let them get away from you, because there'll be temptations to have it pulled out of your hand, so that steadfast love and faithfulness are denied you, are snatched from you. Like maybe a woman carrying a purse where she's afraid it might be snatched, carries it extra close. Here, carry steadfast love, faithfulness close to you. Clutch it so it won't get away. So he says, bind them, steadfast love and faithfulness, around your neck. You know, like a money belt. You see a money belt, put money in and then put it on your waist. That way it can't be taken. No pickpocket can take it away. Here, bind it around not only just your waist, but your neck. So anyone starts to tug at it, you notice it right away. Tie them to yourself. Loyalty, promise-keeping, integrity, consistency. The very opposite of the spouting of empty words, of expressing commitments just because the words sound good to say. You know, it just sounds so good to recite beautifully poetic marriage vows. You know, love, honor, and obey, that kind of thing. It just sounds so great and poetic. You're just saying it for the sound. You don't really believe it. Or in our church covenant, walk together in Christian love. It just sounds so delicious. Who wouldn't want to say that or sign their name to that? But if you commit to doing that, and you have bound steadfast love and faithfulness, around your neck, and written loyalty and integrity on your heart, so it's in you, then you will keep those commitments, even when it's hard. Like in Psalm 15, the Lord looks on the one who keeps his vows even to his hurt. Proverbs chapter 19, verse 22 says, what is desired in a man is steadfast love, loyalty, a love that keeps bound to others. And a poor man is better than a liar. A liar is someone whose words have no connection to truth. They may in fact be true, but that's kind of coincidental. The liar is someone who says things just because the words benefit him to say them. Whether the words are true or not, he doesn't care, including the commitments he or she expresses. Makes commitments, the words sound good. Maybe it's to assure you, I'll be there, I'll do that, I've got your back, whatever it is they commit to do, because they want to assure you. And they're saying them just to get the result they want. Maybe to get you to do something, pay them some money or whatever. Of course, at the time they make their commitments, they swear they're going to keep them, even when the going gets tough. They'll say that. Many a man proclaims his own steadfast love. Remember earlier? What is desired in a man is that he has steadfast love. But actually people who have that, men who have that, is rare. Many a man, though, proclaims he has steadfast love. But a faithful man, who can find? In Proverbs chapter 20, verse 6. Who can find? Because they're rare. Many a man says he has it. The Lord looks for it. But a man who really has it, or a woman who really has it, is rare. In other words, everybody says they're going to keep their commitments when they make them, but the truly faithful are uncommon. The faithful have the self-control to make themselves keep their commitments, even when their feelings, their ego, whatever else says not to. But they keep it anyway. Are you in control of your promise keeping? Last, how about your fears? You in control of your fears? Proverbs chapter 28, verse 1 says, the wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion. That means that the foolish, the unbelievers, they panic. Sometimes at nothing. They just panic. They're full of fear. When they are afraid, they respond irrationally, running away when there's no real threat. They have nothing but this life. This world is all they have. This life here and now. This is it for them. And so if they feel that it is in danger, they'll do anything to hold on to it. And so they're easily manipulated if you just make them afraid. Now, I told you about the swimmer. Remember the swimmer who got cramps at the deep end? Right next to the pool wall. All she had to do was reach out her arm and grab the wall. But she panicked, and she wouldn't do that. The lifeguard had to jump in and save her. Even though she could have saved herself. Just reach out and grab the wall. Hysteria leads to irrationality. Now, over more than a year now, we've seen a lot of people responding irrationally to a virus that is serious. Don't make light of it because I think that's foolish too. It is serious, but it's mainly affected people in easily identifiable groups. Otherwise, you pretty easily know the people who are in danger from this virus, particularly the elderly. Now, reasonable precautions like protecting the elderly, the otherwise vulnerable, that's prudent. But you're just stopping your life, especially if you're not old, you're not otherwise sick. Like wearing a mask when you're alone in a car. That's a sign that you're out of control of your fear, that it's controlling you. Are you in control of your fears? Well, those are the realms of discipline. At least some of them. You could probably find others. There's sex, there's temper, there's luxuries, there's food and drink, there's talking, there's ego, there's promise keeping, there's fear. Very quickly, Proverbs tells us about the relationships of discipline. Relationships that should bring discipline into our lives. So relationships we need. First is the family. The family is the first area of relationships that instill discipline. Whoever spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. In Proverbs chapter 13, verse 24. Folly is bound up in the heart of a child. It's a good depravity verse also. Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline drives it far from him. Get out, folly. A spanking is like an exorcism. With every swat, you drive out a little more foolishness. Discipline your son, and he will give you rest. He will give delight to your heart. Chapter 29, verse 17. A healthy family disciplines the children to train them to discipline themselves. An unhealthy, dysfunctional family will shield the children from discipline, from outside, from school, or from whatever, probably not really discipline themselves either, thinking that no one should touch or criticize my little darling. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 1 says, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. This is so much so that the parent who neglects to discipline his or her children, for all intents and purposes, is setting up the child for disaster. Discipline your son, for there is hope. Do not set your heart on putting him to death. In chapter 19, verse 18. The family was meant to be the school for training children in discipline. The second relationship of discipline is the church. Even though the word is not used, the word church is not used, Proverbs tells us that we need a church. Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. There's been a lot of that because of the pandemic. Isolate yourself. Think you can just watch something on the video and that's enough of a church. No, you need to be in connection with other people so you're not isolated. Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. In Proverbs chapter 18, verse 1. You need to be in relationships with people who will hold you accountable, who will bring sound judgment against you, so that you're not breaking out against it. And that's what the church is, just as the Lord Jesus described in Matthew chapter 18, starting in verse 15. Accountability relationships. It's about people who know you and are willing to correct you, willing to apply sound judgment to your life. And you'll listen to their correction if you want sound judgment. Jesus tells us that the church is to be a community of connected people, lovingly holding each other to account. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 6 says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. Profuse are the kisses of an enemy. The wise then want a community of people, of friends, who will sometimes, if necessary, wound them, their pride anyway. They don't want to be isolated. They want people who would teach them, discipline them, and there's no discipleship without discipline. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 13, verse 20 says, he who walks with the wise grows wise. And that's what we commit to do, covenant to do. Walk together to grow wise. We all need a Ronnie in our life. Someone who'll run beside us and sometimes maybe say hard words to us to get us going like we should, even if it's hard, who stands outside our feelings, especially when we think we can't run anymore or run any faster, and tells us to keep running, to go faster. Now, if we just want to run comfortably, if we want to get no better, we don't care about improving, we don't stretch ourselves, then we'll reject Ronnie. We'll break out against all sound judgment. Maybe we'll quit the team. We'll tell him we don't want any more of his abuse. Isolate ourselves, thinking it's just God and me, and that's all that matters. But God says that we are seeking, when we do that, we are seeking not him, but our own desires, breaking out against all sound judgment. God has made us to run as a team, walk together with the wise, not as isolated individuals. God has made us to be in a church with people like Ronnie, fellow members of the same team, to come beside us and get us going, even if it's going to hurt a little bit for a while. That brings us to the final relationship of discipline, the relationship with God. Some think that if you have a relationship, you don't have discipline. The way people think today, relationships and discipline, that doesn't go together. But Proverbs 3 clearly tells us about the Lord's discipline. Did you notice that? The Lord's discipline. That discipline that we are not to despise or grow tired of. Don't grow tired of his discipline. Now, it's not the cold discipline of a kind of a remote, faceless government of a judge behind a bench who doesn't know you, doesn't care, is just issuing fines or penalties. Or it's not the discipline of sheer willpower as we resolve to keep some rules, go on some diet or whatever it is. It is the discipline that a real relationship with God will inspire. If you are his son or his daughter, you're someone he delights in. Is the son he delights in. Someone he's resolved before the foundation of the earth to call because he delights in you, to justify, eventually to glorify. He gets so much joy in you that he's going to give you every good thing. If you have that kind of relationship with him, he will discipline you. And if you have the relationship, so the motivation to love this God, to delight in him like he delights in you, then that motivation will embrace his discipline. You acknowledge him in all your ways by being disciplined in all your ways. If you have the relationship. If you don't have that, well, none of it makes any sense. Nothing else makes sense. The disciplines really won't make much sense. Why deny myself some pleasure now? The motivation is what Proverbs calls the fear of the Lord. Respecting and loving him so much, you desperately want to be like him and do what he says. It's not something just with sheer willpower that you can make yourself have. I will love the Lord. I will obey his laws. It must be something written on the tablet of your heart. Something made internal, now naturally a part of who you are. It's part of your new nature. And the only way that can happen is if you are born again. If your heart of cold stone is made warm and alive, if it's transformed, that the Spirit produces in you now the fruit of self-control. And so now you know. Now you know. Not just a resolution you've forced on yourself because you know it's better. Now you know his ways are better than your ways. That your own self you were leaning on doesn't make any sense. It's better to lean on him, to put the weight of your life on him, trusting him to hold you up. No longer trusting your own understanding. The problem with saying that we don't need discipline, we don't need a covenant, we just need a vision. The problem with that is that a vision of this God, the God who disciplines every child he receives, our Father who disciplines us like his beloved children, having a relationship with this God who makes a covenant with us, that kind of relationship will inspire in you discipline. That vision of God that you now acknowledge in all your ways, so that you love him and you love his disciplines. You love his correction. You love his ways. Do you have that self-control inspiring vision of your Heavenly Father in your heart? Do you?